I destroyed my wife's life, and she deserved every consequence that followed. My name is John Matthews. I'm 40 years old, an electrician by trade, and I believed in simple things: honest work, keeping your word, and standing by the people you love. For 13 years, I thought Claire believed in those things too. I was wrong. We met at a housewarming party in 2012. She was 25 then, fresh out of college with a marketing degree and dreams bigger than our small Ohio town could contain. I was 27, already established in my trade, looking for something real after watching too many relationships crumble around me. Claire laughed at my terrible jokes that night, listened when I talked about rewiring the Victorian house I'd just bought, and didn't seem bothered that I had grease under my fingernails. "You build things that matter," she said, touching my arm as we stood in the host's cramped kitchen. "Everyone else here just pushes paper around." 6 months later, she moved into my fixer-upper. We spent our evenings side by side, me running. New electrical through walls that hadn't been updated since the 1940s, her painting trim and researching color schemes on Pinterest. We planned our future in that kitchen over coffee and takeout Chinese food. We talked about kids, about the master bedroom addition we'd build, about growing old together in a house we'd made beautiful with our own hands. The wedding was small. Her parents flew in from California, proud of their daughter for finding a solid, dependable man. My mom cried during the ceremony, told me later she'd never seen me so happy. Claire wore her grandmother's dress and promised to love me in good times and bad, for richer or poorer, in sickness and health. For 10 years, she kept those promises. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I built a good reputation in town. People trusted me to wire their homes, fix their electrical problems, show up when I said I would. Claire found work at a local marketing firm, nothing glamorous but steady. We took vacation trips to national parks, hosted barbecues in our backyard, talked about starting a family once the house renovation was complete. Then Jessica got divorced. Jessica had been Claire's college roommate, her maid of honor, the friend who moved to Chicago after graduation, and landed some high-powered corporate job. For years, she'd visited twice a year, always with stories about her exciting city life, her successful husband, their expensive apartment. Claire would be a little quiet for days after Jessica's visits, but she always snapped back to herself. The divorce was messy and public. Jessica's husband had been cheating with his secretary. Cliché, but devastating. Claire followed every detail through phone calls and social media posts. She'd sit at our kitchen table scrolling through Jessica's Instagram, watching her friend document the destruction of her marriage with a mixture of rage and bitter celebration. "She's wasting her prime years," Claire said one evening, showing me a photo of Jessica at some trendy bar surrounded by younger men. "She's finally free to explore who she really is." Something in her voice made me look up from the electrical schematic I was studying. She was staring at that photo with an expression I'd never seen before: hungry, envious, restless. "Explore what?" I asked. "Her sexuality, her desires. Everything she gave up to play house with a man who didn't appreciate her," she replied. The word house hit like a slap. We weren't playing house. We'd built a real life together. Jessica came to visit 3 months after her divorce was finalized. She looked different, thinner, dressed in clothes that seemed designed to attract attention, talking constantly about her journey of self-discovery. She filled our living room with stories of dating apps, sexual adventures, the thrill of finally living authentically. Claire drank in every word. After that visit, my wife started changing. She spent hours on her phone, texting and scrolling through social media. She bought new clothes, tighter, more revealing than anything she'd worn since college. She went out more, claiming Jessica had connected her with a book club, a yoga group, other women who were expanding their horizons. "I feel like I'm finally waking up," she told me one night as she got dressed for another mysterious outing. "Like I've been sleepwalking through my 20s and 30s. "What does that make me?" I asked. "Part of your nightmare?" She kissed my cheek with lips that felt cold. "Don't be dramatic, John. I'm just discovering who I am outside of being someone's wife," she said dismissively. The woman who used to curl up next to me every evening now came home late, smelling like unfamiliar cologne and making excuses I could see through from across the room. The woman who used to ask about my day and listen to my plans now looked at me like I was a prison guard keeping her from freedom. It all came to a head on a Tuesday evening in March. I was reviewing blueprints for a commercial job when Claire sat down across from me at our kitchen table. The same table where we'd planned our wedding, discussed our dreams, shared thousands of meals. "We need to talk," she said. I set down my papers and waited. "I want to open our marriage," she announced. The words hung between us like a live wire, dangerous and sparking. I studied her face, looking for any sign that this was a joke, a test, anything but what it sounded like. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She launched into what sounded like a prepared speech about personal growth, exploring sexuality, the importance of being true to herself. She used phrases like parallel relationships and expanding our love and evolving beyond traditional boundaries. I let her finish. Then I said, "No, John, please just listen," she began. I said, "No," I interrupted. "What you're describing isn't a marriage. It's you wanting permission to cheat while keeping me as backup." Tears started in her eyes. "It's not like that. I love you. I just need to explore other connections, to understand who I am sexually," she pleaded. "Then get divorced," I replied firmly. The tears came harder now. "I don't want a divorce. I want you and this and something more," she sobbed. "You can't have both," I answered, standing up. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop this idea completely, or you're going to pack your things and leave. There's no middle ground, no negotiation, no trial period. Cross that line, and we're done forever," she cried then, really cried, reaching for my hands and promising it was just a thought, just Jessica filling her head with ideas she didn't really mean. She swore she loved only me, that she'd never actually do anything to hurt our marriage. But I saw the resentment in her eyes even as she apologized. I saw the way she looked at me, not like a woman who'd been talked out of a mistake, but like someone whose freedom had been denied. That night, she held me close and whispered promises into my ear. But I could feel the lie in her touch, hear the deception in her breathing. She was planning something, and I knew I'd better be ready when she stopped pretending to be the woman I'd married. I didn't forgive and forget. I started watching. Conversation about opening our marriage had revealed something crucial. Claire was already gone, emotionally speaking. She was just trying to negotiate terms that would let her have her cake and eat it too. When that failed, she'd find another way to get what she wanted. I'd been married to her long enough to recognize her patterns, so I began paying attention in ways I never had before. Not paranoid surveillance, careful observation, the same methodical approach I used to troubleshoot electrical problems. Identify the symptoms, trace the connections, find the fault in the system. Claire became sloppy in her deception, probably because she thought I was too trusting to notice. She'd claimed to be going to book club meetings, but when I casually asked about what they were reading, she'd give vague answers or change the subject. She'd spend Saturday afternoons shopping with Jessica, but come home empty-handed, claiming she couldn't find anything she liked. I started checking small things. Mileage on her car after her supposed trips to the mall 40 minutes away. The clothes she chose for different types of outings, business casual for book club, but tight jeans and low-cut tops for girls' night. The way she showered immediately after coming home from certain activities, even when she'd supposedly spent hours browsing department stores. I bought a small notebook, the kind I use to track electrical specs on job sites, and started documenting inconsistencies. Times, dates, stories that didn't add up. I kept it hidden in my toolbox, along with the other tools of my trade. 3 weeks after our kitchen conversation, I followed her for the first time. She'd claimed to be meeting Jessica for dinner at a restaurant downtown. I parked across the street and watched them through the window, close enough to read their body language, far enough to stay invisible. They spent 2 hours talking, and from what I could see, Claire was doing most of it. Jessica leaned forward like a therapist or co-conspirator, nodding, gesturing, occasionally reaching across the table to squeeze Claire's hand. When they stood to leave, Jessica hugged her for a long time and whispered something in her ear that made Claire nod vigorously. I followed Claire home at a distance, noting that she took the scenic route, adding 20 minutes to a trip that should have been direct, buying time to think, to prepare whatever story she'd tell me about her evening. "How was dinner?" I asked when she came through the door. "Good. Jessica's doing really well." "She's dating someone new," Claire replied, kicking off her heels and heading for the stairs. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to shower and go to bed." "What restaurant did you go to?" I inquired. "That Italian place on 5th Street? You know, the one with the candles?" She answered. She was right about the candles. Wrong about everything else. They'd eaten at O'Malley's pub, and I had the receipt she'd thrown away in the parking lot to prove it. The second time I followed her, she met Jessica at a wine bar near the university. This time, I parked closer, close enough to catch fragments of their conversation through the open windows. Jessica was coaching her about something, using phrases like, "You deserve to feel desired," and "John will never know if you're careful." Claire's responses were harder to hear, but her body language told the story. She was nervous, excited, asking questions. Taking notes, maybe literally. She had her phone out, typing occasionally. They were planning something. That night she came home and made love to me with an intensity that felt desperate, almost guilty. Like she was trying to convince herself she could still be the wife I needed her to be. But the way she closed her eyes during the entire encounter told me she was already gone, lost in fantasies about someone else. I installed a GPS tracker on her car the following Tuesday while she was at work. Nothing sophisticated, just a small device designed to help find stolen construction equipment. I justified it by reminding myself that technically I owned half the car. If my wife was using our shared property to betray our marriage, I had a right to know. I also started photographing important documents, bank statements, property deeds, insurance policies, anything that would matter if this marriage exploded. My electrician's mind understood the importance of having backup systems when the primary circuit fails. 2 weeks later, Claire announced she had another shopping trip planned for Saturday. "Jessica found this outlet mall about an hour north of here," she said, not meeting my eyes as she folded laundry in our bedroom. "We're going to make a day of it." But this Saturday was different. She spent an hour getting ready, longer than she'd spent preparing for our wedding day. She wore new lingerie under her clothes. I knew because I do the laundry and I'd never seen the black lace set before. She put on makeup like she was going to a photo shoot, not bargain hunting. When she kissed me goodbye, her lips tasted like guilt and desperation. "Have fun shopping," I said, watching her face for any crack in the performance. "I will. I'll probably be late. You know how Jessica likes to hit every store," she replied. I gave her a 2-minute head start, then grabbed my keys. I was done, watching from a distance. It was time to see exactly what my wife was shopping for. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, matching the dread that had settled in my chest. I followed Claire's car northbound on Highway 23, staying 3 cars back, using techniques I'd learned from crime shows but never thought I'd need in real life. She didn't go to any outlet mall. Instead, she took the exit for Eastwood Shopping Center, a dying mall with half-empty storefronts and a reputation for being the kind of place teenagers went to get into trouble. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I watched her navigate toward the parking structure. The underground garage was dimly lit and nearly empty on a Saturday afternoon. Perfect for privacy. Perfect for secrets. Claire parked on level B2, in a section far from any actual stores, away from foot traffic and security cameras. I found a parking spot 20 spaces away, behind a concrete pillar that gave me a clear view while keeping me hidden. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pulled out my phone and started recording. Claire sat in her car for 5 minutes, checking her appearance in the rearview mirror, touching up her lipstick, texting someone. She looked nervous and excited. way she used to look before our first date, before our wedding day, before any moment that mattered to her. A silver sedan pulled up next to her car. Late model BMW, expensive. The driver got out first, a man I'd never seen before, probably late. 20s, wearing clothes that cost more than I made in a week. Dark hair, gym-fit body, the kind of confident smile that suggested he was used to getting what he wanted. Claire practically leaped from her car into his arms. They kissed in the open air of the parking garage like teenagers, hands roaming, bodies pressed together with desperate hunger. I zoomed in with my phone camera, capturing clear shots of their faces, the license plate of his car, the timestamp that would prove when and where this betrayal took place. Then they got into his BMW. The windows were tinted, but not enough to hide what happened next. I crept closer, moving from pillar to pillar, getting angles that clearly showed my wife's face as she straddled this stranger in the passenger seat, her head thrown back in ecstasy, her hands clutching his shoulders, her mouth open in sounds of pleasure I hadn't heard in months. 13 years of marriage, and she'd never looked at me the way she looked at him. Something primal and violent erupted in my chest. The careful, methodical man who'd been documenting evidence disappeared, replaced by something raw and dangerous. I yanked the BMW's door open with enough force to nearly tear it from its hinges. The man, boy, really, scrambled to cover himself, as I dragged him naked from the car by his perfectly styled hair. He was younger than I'd thought, maybe 25, with the soft muscles of someone who worked out for appearance rather than function. "Please, man, I didn't know," he started to say. My fist connected with his nose before he could finish the sentence. The cartilage cracked with a sound like snapping wood, and blood exploded across his face. He screamed and tried to cover himself, but I grabbed him by the throat and drove my knee into his ribs. Once, twice, 3 times, until I felt something give way. Claire was screaming too, still half naked in the passenger seat, crying and begging me to stop. But her voice sounded far away, underwater, drowned out by the roaring in my ears. The man fell to the concrete, gasping and whimpering, blood pooling beneath his face. He tried to crawl away, leaving a smear of red on the garage floor. I almost went after him, almost finished what I'd started, but Claire grabbed my arm with both hands. "John, please, stop, please," she begged. I looked down at her. My wife, the woman who'd promised to love and honor me. The woman who'd thrown away 13 years for whatever this pathetic boy had offered her in exchange. "Get dressed," I said, my voice calm despite the violence still thrumming through my veins. She fumbled for her clothes, crying so hard she could barely see. The man crawled to his BMW, managed to pull himself into the driver's seat, and sped away without looking back. Smart choice. I didn't say another word to Claire. I walked to my truck, got in, and drove directly to the law offices of Brennan and Associates, the divorce attorneys I'd researched 2 months earlier, just in case. I sat in their parking lot for 20 minutes, still covered in another man's blood, and called their emergency number. I had evidence. I had witnesses. I had everything I needed to destroy the woman who'd destroyed our marriage. By the time Claire came home that night, sobbing and begging for forgiveness, the divorce papers were already being prepared. Claire stumbled through our front door. At 9:30 that night, makeup streaked down her face, still wearing the clothes she'd put on to seduce another man. She found me sitting at our kitchen table, papers spread out in front of me like battle plans, completely calm. "John, please, we need to talk," she began. "No, we don't," I replied without looking up from the documents my attorney had emailed me. "We're done talking." She collapsed into the chair across from me, the same chair where she'd asked to open our marriage 6 weeks earlier. "It didn't mean anything. It was just physical. I love you. I love our life together," she pleaded. "You loved the security I provided. You loved having a nice house and steady income while you figured out what you really wanted," I answered, finally meeting her eyes. "Turns out what you wanted was to have intimacy with a kid half your age in a parking garage." "Don't say that. It wasn't like that. Jessica said, she protested. Jessica's a divorced woman who wanted company in her misery, and you were stupid enough to let her convince you to throw away the best thing in your life, I interrupted. I slid a manila folder across the table. Claire opened it with shaking hands, her face going white as she saw the photographs, the GPS tracking data, the detailed timeline of her lies and deceptions. "You've been watching me?" she asked in shock. "You've been lying to me for months. This affair didn't start today, Claire. It started the moment you decided I wasn't enough for you," I replied. She flipped through pages of evidence, screenshots, of text messages I'd retrieved from our shared phone plan, credit card records showing purchases she'd tried to hide, the notebook documenting every inconsistency in her stories. "How long have you been planning this?" she whispered. "Since the night you asked for permission to cheat." "I knew you'd find another way to get what you wanted," I answered, leaning back in my chair. "The only question was whether you'd be smart enough to cover your tracks. You weren't." She tried tears first, then anger, claiming I was controlling, that I'd violated her privacy, that a loving husband would fight for their marriage instead of building a case for its destruction. When that failed, she attempted bargaining. She'd cut off all contact with Jessica, go to therapy, do whatever it took to earn my trust back. "Some things can't be fixed, Claire. Some mistakes are permanent," I said, standing up and collecting my papers. "Here's how this is going to work. You can leave voluntarily tonight, or I can make this public. Your choice." "You wouldn't," she started to say. I pulled out my phone and showed her a draft email containing the most damning photos, addressed to her parents, her siblings, her co-workers, and everyone in her contact list. "One button, Claire. That's all it would take." Her face crumpled. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you gone, tonight. And I want you to understand that there are consequences for destroying other people's lives," I replied. The legal proceedings moved with brutal efficiency. Claire couldn't afford a decent attorney because I'd already documented every joint asset, frozen accounts she'd been using to fund her affair, and transferred money to accounts she couldn't access. Her lawyer was a public defender type who specialized in drunk driving cases, completely outmatched by the firm I'd hired. She tried to claim emotional abuse, but my attorney destroyed that argument by presenting evidence of the romantic trips I'd planned, the gifts I'd bought, the household improvements I'd made to build our future together. Meanwhile, her affair partner had disappeared completely, probably scared I'd come back to finish what I'd started in the garage. The most devastating blow came when I showed the evidence to her parents. I'd always respected Robert and Linda, successful professionals who'd raised Claire to believe in hard work and personal responsibility. They flew in from California expecting to support their daughter through a difficult divorce. Instead, they sat in my living room and watched their daughter's betrayal documented in high-definition photographs. "I'm so sorry, John," Linda said, tears streaming down her face. "We raised her better than this." Robert just stared at the photos, his face gray with shame. "How could you do this to a man who loved you?" he asked Claire. Claire tried to explain, to justify, to shift blame to Jessica and her unhappiness and her need for self-discovery. But her parents had seen enough. They apologized to me again, told Claire she needed to face the consequences of her choices, and cut off the financial support she'd been counting on. Jessica, the friend who'd encouraged this disaster, dropped Claire completely when word got out. Turned out Jessica valued her own reputation more than her loyalty to the woman she'd helped destroy. The judge signed the final decree on a Tuesday morning in late May. Claire walked out of that courtroom with nothing but the clothes on her back, and the knowledge that some mistakes can never be undone. I walked out with the house, the savings, the retirement accounts, and my self-respect intact. 6 months later, I live alone in the house we once shared, but it feels more like home than it ever did with Claire in it. I've remodeled the kitchen, where she asked to betray our marriage, painted over the memories we made together, and started fresh in ways that matter. I'm dating someone new, Sarah from my church, a widow who understands the value of commitment and the pain of losing something precious. She doesn't ask many questions about my divorce, just accepts that some marriages end badly and some people learn to be grateful for second chances. Claire, according to mutual acquaintances, works part-time at a Target in the next town over and still lives with her parents. The BMW boy never contacted her again, probably smart enough to recognize a destructive woman when he sees one. Jessica moved to Denver, leaving Claire without her enabler and co-conspirator. I run into Claire's mother at the grocery store occasionally. Linda always apologizes for her daughter's behavior, says Claire cries about losing me, claims she's learned her lesson and grown as a person. I listen politely and say nothing that matters. Some lessons come too late to change anything. The house feels different now, cleaner, quieter, more honest. I finished the electrical work Claire and I started together, upgraded systems that had been neglected for years, fixed problems that had been building beneath the surface. It's satisfying work, making something better than it was before. Claire wanted freedom from commitment, from responsibility, from the boring stability of being married to an electrician who loved her completely. I gave her exactly what she asked. 4. Complete freedom from me, from financial security, from social respectability, from the comfortable life she threw away for a few hours of excitement with a stranger. I don't hate her anymore. Hate requires caring, and I simply don't. She made her choice in that parking garage, and I made mine in the lawyer's office. We both have to live with the consequences. She's free now, just like she wanted, and I'm free of her, which is exactly what she earned. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.